Today, you will discover why the silence that surrounds you is not rejection. It is a call to action. What seems like abandonment is actually a gateway. If everything around you fails to recognize your efforts, if no one applauds you, it is because the time has come for something that no one can do for you, to wake up inside. And when that happens, the outside world ceases to be a judge and becomes a backdrop. You don't need the audience to believe, you need your conscience to awaken. That is what transforms an ordinary life into an extraordinary journey. There are phases when walking seems like climbing a mountain covered in fog. You hear only your own breathing, your footsteps creaking, your heart insisting. No one beside you, no one calling your name, no one saying, "I saw what you did." The phone doesn't ring, the notification doesn't arrive, the invitation doesn't come. And your mind whispers, "What if all this isn't worth it?" What do you do when the only witness to your effort is the mirror itself? It is precisely in this terrain that something secret begins to be born. A force that does not depend on applause, an axis that does not ask the world for permission to exist. Carl Jung said that every rebirth begins with a dissolution. Something needs to fall apart. The old image, the mask that worked, the character that fit in at dinners, in polite conversations, in predictable roles. Suddenly, the old jokes are no longer funny. Familiar places seem like settings where your soul no longer resides. You still sit at the table, still smile, still participate, but something in you doesn't arrive, doesn't settle, doesn't recognize itself. It's uncomfortable, it's silent, it's necessary. Who said that growth comes with fanfare? Loneliness here is not an empty room. It is a mismatch with a script that no longer suits you. It is realizing that you have become accustomed to being useful, pleasant, efficient, and that, even so, there is a call for another quality of presence. The automatic impulse is to flee, fill your schedule, buy new things, bury yourself in work, collect shallow conversations to silence the emptiness. It works for a few minutes, then the question returns. What part of myself have I not yet dared to sit next to? I met a woman who, after a divorce that disrupted her home and identity, had to face a simple and terrible thing: the end of noise. Without the background laughter, without the tasks of two, the night became too long. She tried distractions, she tried speeding things up, she tried to give life a sound that didn't come, until one day she stopped. She made coffee for herself, set the table for one, sat down, and stayed. At first, 5 minutes, then an hour. She wrote without embellishment. She cried without an audience. She cooked the basic. She relearned her own name without a last name. Months later, she said, "Silence is no longer an enemy. It has become an address." It wasn't heroism. It was a return. What did she find? It wasn't certainty. It was grounding. The kind of grounding that only appears when a person decides to be true to themselves, even without witnesses. Look at an oak tree in winter. No one photographs it. There are no flowers, no leaves, no scent. The wind blows, the frost weighs heavy. The landscape looks dead. But underground, the roots grow. The colder it gets, the deeper they grow. This is how the tree prepares for a spring that no one sees coming. People are similar. What we call loneliness is sometimes the hidden work of the roots. You can curse the season, or you can use it to deepen what sustains you. What is your choice? What if the question is not, when will the color return, but what internal structure can I build while it does not come? In a world addicted to stimuli, the pause seems like defeat. But the pause is a workshop. Silence is where the tyranny of applause ends and the conversation with the soul begins. Don't confuse recognition with meaning. Recognition is the eyes of others on you. Meaning is your inner gaze, finding coherence. The first is unstable. The second is foundation. Why wait for the approval of those who don't have to walk in the dark in your place? There is a trained desire within us to react to external signals. Did they value me? Then I'll continue. Did they not notice? Then I'll stop. This makes you a hostage to moods, emotions, and statistics. But there is another way, rougher and nobler. The inner discipline of doing what you know honors you, even if no one applauds, even if no one notices, even if no one understands. What remains when you remove the audience? What do you continue to do when there is no reward? The answer to these questions outlines who you are when no one is looking. The strange thing is that when a person accepts the journey, cracks appear through which light enters. You notice details that you used to overlook, your breath returning to your body, the cup warming your hand, The thoughts that used to race now slowing down. It is not ecstasy. It is sobriety. It is like cleaning a mirror. The landscape does not change, but it finally appears. Small conflicts also arise. What if I have become cold? What if I lose the one I love? What if I am making a mistake again? Every transformation converses with these ghosts. They ask loudly. You answer softly. And yet you answer. Is there enough courage to say a small yes 1,000 times until it becomes a path? Some people confuse loneliness with punishment. If no one stayed, there is something wrong with me. This sentence seems humble, but it is cruel. It speaks of neediness as if it were guilt, and robs the experience of the opportunity to mature. What if, on the contrary, the distance is a space that life has carved out for you to rediscover yourself? What if the people who are not with you now are just organizing themselves in other orbits that do not need to hold you back? These are not questions to ease pain. They are questions to liberate meaning. What hurts often is not being alone. It is having waited for someone to guarantee what was missing. When the other person does not deliver, we call it abandonment. But the soul calls it an invitation to take care of what we always outsource. We regulate our emotions by demanding answers. We return our value by waiting for confirmation. We negotiate inner peace in exchange for likes, messages, signal. The math doesn't add up. There comes a time when absence becomes a mirror and asks, are you staying with yourself? Accepting this question is starting a new chapter. In practical terms, this starts small. Place your hand on your chest when your heart races, as if calling your body home. Name the emotion without dramatizing it. Sadness, fear, anger, hunger for affection. It's not about solving it, it's about recognizing it. Recognition is the food of presence, and presence creates a loyalty that you will never confuse with performance again. You owe yourself a commitment. Don't abandon yourself. If the world leaves the room, will you stay? If the conversation doesn't come, will you talk? If approval is silent, will you notice yourself? There are days when courage doesn't come whole. All you'll have is half a step. Take that half step. Who said dignity is about size? Sometimes dignity is consistency. A written page, a short walk, a glass of water before arguing, a no said with care. It is in these tiny spaces that sovereignty grows. This is what life trusts when the audience disappears. Your habit of being loyal to what you believe in, even on an ordinary day. The mind, in turn, likes tricks. It tries to take you to the court of why? Why me? Why now? Why so much? Meanwhile, energy drains away. Swap the court for a workshop. What can I do with this? It's not poetry. It's soul engineering. When you change the question, you change the quality of the internal movement. The feeling of victimhood diminishes. Curiosity gains strength. What would be a small step that honors who you want to become? Go to bed a little earlier. Read 10 pages. Breathe 3 times before sending. Not because the world will see it, but because your core will see it. And internal witness is worth more than headlines. The fog may get worse before it gets better. This is confusing. You think, so it's not working. It is. The old pattern that was losing you to yourself is resisting. Systems resist before they give way. At this moment, don't betray your practice. It's time to be patient like an oak tree. You don't have to feel like you believe. You have to act like you believe. There's a difference. The first depends on mood. The second builds character. There are memories that come up to test your purpose. You remember who hurt you, everything that was unfair, the betrayal, the closed door. The temptation to replay the drama is strong. The temptation to collect witnesses is also strong. But what exactly needs to be repeated? The injustice or the decision not to be reduced to it? Tell the story so that it frees you, not so that it imprisons you. Ask yourself, if no one could hear me, what choice would still be right? The answer is usually silent and immediate. Take good care of yourself. Keep your word to yourself. Cultivate truthfulness. This is not selfishness. It is responsibility. Only those who inhabit themselves can be whole with others. The metaphor of winter is not an invitation to inertia. It is an invitation to foundation. The winter of the soul calls for invisible work, tidying up internal drawers, recycling beliefs, examining old pacts, letting go of identities that earned applause and covered emptiness. Can you like yourself without the clothes of roles? Can you be generous without getting emotionally indebted? Can you disagree without feeling bad? This is the kind of muscle that flourishes when the audience does not give its opinion. It's beautiful to realize that, little by little, life takes on a different texture. Your usual coffee smells different. Your usual street has a different sky. The same task seems less hostile because you do it for a new reason, not for the trophy, but because it expresses a decision. You're not proving anything. You're becoming someone. The difference is enormous. Proving is theater. Becoming is a rite. Perhaps people will call you distant. Perhaps you will seem less available for the old games. It is a price. Prices are paid when values change. Do not return the key to the new house for fear of looking bad in the photo. No one else can live there for you. If it hurts, sit with the pain. Legitimate pain deserves a chair, not expulsion. Take your time. What is the pain trying to protect? What old promise can you update? What boundary needs to be drawn with more care? And please, don't wait for the world to validate your journey in order to legitimize. Recognition is an effect. Alignment is cause. There is a moment when the soul, tired of explaining itself, chooses to become. And when that happens, a stillness springs forth from within. It is not complacency, it is centering. You look ahead and understand. No one will lift me up. And that is the best news, because my strength will no longer depend on anyone else's mood. Initiation stories have always spoken of this with simple symbol. The hero who crosses the dark forest, the pilgrim who endures the cold of dawn, the apprentice who sweeps the floor for years before playing the instrument. The reward is not the applause at the end of the trail. The reward is the person you had to become to cross it. The world may not notice it immediately, but gestures change. The voice changes. Posture changes. The soul recognizes the soul. The rest is the delay of someone else's clock. If today the path before you is foggy, maybe that's exactly why you're in the right place. When external vision fails, the internal compass awakens. You don't need brilliant answers. You need an honest north. A north given by simple questions. What is true here? What honors me now? What keeps me human while everything pulls me down? Don't underestimate the power of these questions. They are the ones that, repeated in a low voice, reorganize a life. At the end of the day, no one needs to applaud you for that small step to have value. It is valuable because it is aligned with what you already know, even when you would rather not know. Consciousness does not unlearn. Once you have seen, you have seen. You can postpone, you can negotiate, you can fall asleep, but sooner or later, the vision returns and demands consistency, not to punish you, but to set you free. Freedom is expensive because it is intimate. You only recognize it when you can no longer lie to yourself. If those around you don't believe, if no one bets on you, if the room is empty, breathe. The journey has not lost its meaning. It has only returned you to the only place where meaning can be born. The silence did not come to humiliate you. It came to align you. Refuse the role of victim. Embrace your pain with dignity. Act in small ways. Uphold what is right when no one else does. This is how life changes places, from the stage to the center of your chest. And when the fog lifts, because one day it will, you will not have just arrived at some point. You will have become someone who walks with their own light, not because the light is seen, but because it now exists. And the curious thing is that when it comes into existence, the world begins to see without you having to shout. Presence precedes proof. You will know. The body knows when it is at home. Your breathing changes. The weight falls from your shoulders. Your steps find rhythm. The mountain is still big. The difference is that, inside, you have stopped negotiating with fear and started talking to courage. You are not looking for an audience. You are heading towards yourself. The rest, recognition, company, applause, may come, may not come. That does not make the truth any less true. What matters is that, when everyone else doubts, you have learned not to doubt yourself. Because it is at this very point, devoid of guarantees, that life finds room to flourish. And it flourishes, in silence, in roots, in small gestures, in firm decisions. What you choose now says more about your future than any opinion. Choose to be faithful. Choose to continue. Choose the light even when no one points it out. The mountain, which once seemed like a judgment, becomes a path, and the path which once seemed lonely becomes home. There is a moment after you learn to walk in silence when another loneliness appears, more subtle, more profound. That's when you realize that what really tires you is not being alone, but waiting for someone to come and fill you up. Physical absence doesn't hurt as much as the emptiness of depending on someone else to feel whole. And then comes the question that few have the courage to face. How many times have you called love what was actually fear of being alone? Many people live for decades within this pattern without realizing it. Adulthood becomes a rehearsal for acceptance. At work, in relationships, in opinions. It's the "you do everything right, but you feel like something is missing." When the return doesn't come, despair sets in, as if existence itself were suspended. You send a message, and the other person's silence eats away at you. You do something good, and no one comments. You offer help, and no one thanks you. Your heart cries out, "Why doesn't anyone see me?" But behind this pain lies a difficult truth. As long as your value depends on someone else's response, you will never be at home. Carl Jung said that true loneliness does not come from the absence of people, but from the inability to communicate what really matters. It's when you speak and feel that no one understands, when your pain seems too much for some, and your truth strange to others, and then you diminish yourself. You reduce your own intensity to fit into other people's spaces. You learn to smile automatically, so as not to bother anyone, until one day your body begins to protest. Your stomach tightens, you can't sleep, your heart races for no reason. It's not an illness, it's your soul tired of waiting for approval. I met a man, recently retired, who described this feeling in a simple way. He said, "I spent my life trying to be what others expected, and now I no longer know what I want." He retired with a good salary, a paid-off house, and grown children. And yet, there was a hole. Every day he sat on the porch, looked at the gate, and waited for something. When I asked him what it was, he replied, "I don't know. I think someone to tell me that I'm still good for something." It was an emptiness masked as rest. What he was looking for was not praise. It was a mirror. He wanted to see in someone's eyes a confirmation that he existed. But that confirmation, no matter how much it comes, never lasts. Today they say you're amazing. Tomorrow they forget. Today they invite you. Tomorrow they ignore you. External validation is like sugar. It gives you energy for a few minutes, but it makes you more dependent. And when the addiction is emotional, the body adapts to crumbs. You accept crumbs of attention, crumbs of respect, crumbs of love. You learn to justify it. That's just the way he is. That's life. Nobody's perfect. Until one day you realize that your soul is hungry, and that the feast you expected from others will never come. Because the food you lack is not outside, it is inside. This is the time to relearn how to comfort yourself. And it's not easy. Society as a whole has taught you the opposite. Don't cry. It will pass. Don't think about it. Let's go out to distract ourselves. No one teaches you to sit with your own suffering. But it is there, in that silent gesture, that emotional independence is born. When sadness comes, don't push it away. Stay a while. Listen to what it has to say. Maybe it's just a reminder. You left me in the dark for too long. Touch your chest, take a deep breath, and say to yourself, "I am here." It seems small, but it's a game changer. The day you comfort yourself is the day you stop asking the world to do it for you. A 58-year-old woman told me that after a painful breakup, she felt like she had lost her footing. "I've always been everyone's foundation," she said, "and suddenly when I needed support, no one was there." She spent months seeking comfort in messages, social media, and superficial conversations, until she realized that the more she tried to distract herself, the emptier she felt. One day, tired, she did something new. She turned off her cell phone and went for a walk alone to the beach. No headphones, no music, just the sound of the sea. She cried as she walked, and in the midst of that crying, something changed. I realized I wasn't alone. I was with myself. Since then, she has done this every day. She said she learned to be her own best company. And interestingly, it was when she stopped looking for someone to heal her that people began to approach her. In a different, lighter, more genuine way. It's a paradox. When you stop chasing attention, life starts to notice you. Because the energy changes, the body relaxes, your presence becomes whole. You no longer speak to be heard, you speak because it's true. You no longer love to be loved, you love because it's natural. You no longer work to prove your worth, you work because it expresses who you are. Emotional independence is silent but magnetic. It is the beauty of those who ask for nothing and therefore attract what is sincere. But there is an obstacle that almost everyone faces at this stage: the need to complain. Complaining is the last refuge of the ego that still needs witness. It is the sophisticated disguise of neediness. It is the "look what they did to me" disguised as casual conversation. The mind uses complaining to feel alive, because suffering, even if uncomfortable, is still a kind of attention. Have you ever noticed how complaining gives you a strange feeling of importance? It's like saying, "I'm special, even in pain." The problem is that this creates a cycle. The more you complain, the more life gives you reasons to keep complaining. Energy becomes addicted to repetition. A 60-year-old man once wrote to me saying that he had lost his job and spent his days saying, "No one wants to hire old people." At first it was an outburst, then it became routine, until one day, in a cafe, he heard a friend say exactly the same thing, and he saw himself in it. I realized I was becoming what I feared most, a man trapped in his own resentment. The next day he woke up and decided to change his tune. He started writing down what he still had to offer: experience, calmness, broad vision, patience. He took courses, relearned how to use technology, and set up a simple consulting business. Today he works less, earns less, but lives more lightly. He said, "It wasn't the world that changed, it was me who stopped complaining about it." That's it. Complaining creates an invisible prison. Gratitude opens the door. Every time you say, "Nobody cares about me," your brain understands it as true, and the unconscious obeys. It starts to ignore any contrary signs: the neighbor's smile, the cashier's "good morning," the discreet gesture of someone trying to help you. Anything that doesn't confirm the complaint is discarded. And so the world seems increasingly cold. That's why stopping complaining is not naivety. It is a spiritual act of reprogramming. You shift your focus from lack to creation. Instead of saying, "No one understands me," ask, "How can I express myself more clearly?" Instead of thinking, "They are forgetting me," say, "Where can I show up fully?" Words shape the field in which the soul breathes. Some say that complaining is venting. It is not. Venting is releasing. Complaining is retaining. Venting cleanses. Complaining repeats. A person can vent 1,000 times and still be hurt if, in each account, they are only reinforcing their role as a victim. Jung called this the shadow of self-pity, that place where pain becomes identity. When suffering ceases to be an experience and becomes a justification, you stop growing, and, without realizing it, you start collecting failures so you can continue to have something to talk about. How many conversations revolve around the same wounds from years ago? How many times do you repeat the story, hoping that this time it will set you free? One day, a 72-year-old lady said something to me that I have never forgotten. I was widowed 15 years ago, and I realized that I spent the first 10 years telling the same story. Every time I said, "He left me so soon," I cried the same tears. Until one day I thought, what if I tell this story to live and not to suffer? From then on, she began to talk about what she had learned from her husband, their travels, their smiles, their old letters. The tone changed. The pain became a legacy. "I didn't lose him. I took him with me," she said. That's what happens when you stop complaining. The life that seemed to punish you begins to teach you. Notice, complaining puts you in the past. Action brings you to the present. Gratitude opens you up to the future. These are three different places in the time of the soul. When you fixate on, "Why did this happen to me?" you get stuck in yesterday. When you decide, "What can I do with this now?" energy moves. Consciousness takes command again. The victim gives way to the creator. This is not theory. It is training. It requires repetition. You will slip. You will return to complaining. You will feel anger. That's okay. The important thing is to notice. Every time you find yourself repeating the old speech, a little piece of consciousness awakens. And awakening is made up of small awakening. The world in 2025 is noisy. News, screens, opinions, everything screams. But the most profound transformations continue to happen in silence. Perhaps that is why so many people feel an unnamed tiredness. It is difficult to hear yourself amid so much noise. Stopping complaining is also a way to silence the external noise you have internalized. When you silence your complaints, you create space to hear what lies beneath them. Sometimes it's not anger, it's grief. Sometimes it's not fear, it's longing. And when you name it honestly, the emotion dissolves. It no longer needs a stage. This does not mean denying what hurts. Quite the contrary. It means allowing the pain to fulfill its role, to reveal where you have not yet belonged. As long as the pain exists, it has something to teach. What you cannot do is make it a permanent home. You may have been wronged, yes. You may have been betrayed, forgotten, underestimated. But that is history. What you do with it is destiny. And destiny, unlike the past, is always in your hands. Ultimately, growing up is a process of unlearning. You unlearn how to define yourself by the way others see you. You unlearn how to expect from others what only your inner self can offer. You discover that you don't need someone to tell you, "It'll be okay," to keep going. True strength comes when you become the adult who would have comforted the child you once were. When you tell yourself what you always hoped to hear, "You matter," even when no one else notices. That is the beginning of emotional freedom. The moment when self-love ceases to be a phrase and becomes a gesture. If you feel invisible today, know that this is not a punishment. It is the universe inviting you to be visible to yourself. When no one listens to you, it is because life wants you to listen to yourself. When no one understands you, it is because the time has come for you to understand yourself. And, believe me, the world changes subtly when that happens. New people appear. Opportunities align. Your body seems to breathe better. It is not magic, it is coherence. Life responds to the frequency of what you vibrate. If you vibrate neediness, you attract absence. If you vibrate presence, you attract truth. None of this is easy, but all of it is possible. It takes courage to stop begging for attention and start building presence. It takes maturity to replace complaining with responsibility. It takes humility to realize that no one owes you completeness. Happiness has never been a prize, it has always been a practice. And every practice begins when you decide that your well-being no longer depends on anyone else comforting you. It depends only on you not abandoning yourself. Maybe loneliness will still come from time to time, and that's okay. Now it doesn't scare you. Now you know what to do with it. Instead of asking the world to welcome you, you welcome yourself. Instead of complaining about what is missing, you create meaning. And when your heart calms down, life starts moving again, in its own way, at the right time. Because what is real is not built in noise, it is built in silence. And it is in this silence that your new self begins to be born. There is a moment, after so much silence and learning, when something changes inside you. You no longer complain, you no longer seek comfort in the eyes of others, but you still feel a kind of emptiness. It is the point at which many give up, not out of weakness, but out of exhaustion. It is the fatigue of doing everything right and still remaining invisible. You give your best, act with integrity, are consistent, loyal, and nothing happens. No recognition, no applause, no outstretched hand. And that's when the test really begins. Most people think that maturing means understanding the world, but Jung said that maturing means accepting being misunderstood by it, and continuing anyway. Because there is a stage on the path when the universe is silent, not to punish you, but to test you. It is the moment when destiny asks, "Are you still capable of being true to yourself, even without an audience?" It is the test of self-validation, the ability to sustain yourself internally when the whole world seems to be looking the other way. Think about how many times you did something good and no one saw it. How many times you tried to be fair and ended up being the villain of the story. How many times have you helped in silence and been forgotten? Why does life allow this? Is it injustice or refinement? When no one applauds you, something in you needs to learn to be your own mirror. And that's where maturity begins. Cassandra, in Greek mythology, was cursed to see the future, but no one believed her vision. She shouted truths, warned of dangers, and the world called her crazy. Even so, she did not remain silent. She continued to say what she saw, even alone. Sometimes, that is what the universe asks of you, that you hold on to your truth, even when the world prefers the comfort of lies. Can you continue to do the right thing, even when no one is watching? A woman once told me that she worked for 30 years at a company. She was the first to arrive and the last to leave. When she retired, she didn't even receive a thank you. At first, she was bitter. "No one saw what I did," she said. But over time she realized that the value of what she did was not in the applause. It was in the integrity of someone who does the right thing because it is the right thing to do. And it was curious. After a while, former colleagues began to visit her, not out of obligation, but because they missed her calm, reliable, and honest presence. The world may take its time, but time always recognizes what is true. What happens when you decide to continue, even without being seen? Something changes in the energy. You stop acting for validation and start acting for consistency. What was once effort becomes natural. What was once a search becomes expression. You no longer need to prove anything, just live what is. And paradoxically, It is when you stop trying to be noticed that the world begins to see you. Have you ever felt that, at certain moments in life, everything seems to fall apart at once? Friendships, work, faith, purpose, as if the ground that supported you had been pulled out from under you? In those moments, it's common to think you've failed. But what if what's collapsing isn't your life, but your ego? Jung said that the ego needs to break down so that the self can emerge. The collapse you fear may be the birth of a new version of yourself. The problem is that the birth of a consciousness hurts as much as the birth of a body. A 53-year-old man wrote to me recently. He had lost his job, his marriage, and part of his savings in less than a year. He said he felt wiped off the map. Everything he knew about himself had fallen apart. I asked him what he was doing now that he could no longer be the same. He replied, "I cook. I always wanted to cook, but I never had time." Months later, he opened a small kitchen at home. He started by selling lunchboxes. Today, he makes a living from it, happy and at peace. And he told me something that I carry with me. I didn't lose everything, only what no longer suited who I was becoming. Sometimes, what you call failure is what brings you back to your truth. Have you ever wondered what lies behind your biggest falls? Maybe they are not punishments, but invitations. Every time life knocks you down, it is showing you where you are not yet whole. Failures do not come to destroy you, they come to reveal you, because the ego hates to fall, but the soul needs to. It is on the ground that you realize what really lifts you up. Imagine a flame. When the wind blows, it flickers, but if the fuel is good, it doesn't go out. It just dances differently. So it is with the soul when it matures. The world blows, and you no longer go out, you just change shape. Each fall teaches you a new dance. And the question is, how many times will you still blame yourself for falling, when falling is what teaches you to get up differently? Many wait for courage to act, but courage never comes before action. Courage is born during, and the more you act, the more fear turns into present. The secret is not to identify with the stumble. Mistakes don't define, they refine. Jung said that mistakes are the foundations of truth. Without them, the soul does not create density. It is in friction that character is revealed. From time to time, fate will test you with silence, failure, or rejection. But it is not a punishment. It is a fine-tuning. It is the universe checking to see if what you say matches who you are. And if you resist, not reacting with bitterness, something profound happens. The inner fire begins to ignite. It is the moment when needing becomes being. Science confirms what the soul has always known. When you act after a failure, the brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter of overcoming. But if you freeze, the body goes into defense mode, flooded with cortisol, the fear hormone. In other words, those who react with movement heal. Those who surrender to paralysis become ill. Healing begins with the next step, not with waiting. Think for a second. What has lifted you out of your worst pains to date? Someone's advice or the moment you decided to keep going, even though you were trembling? It's always the second, because it is at that moment, without applause and without guarantees, that the superficial self dies and the real self is born. The strength you feel there does not come from outside. It comes from an ancient region of the soul that has always known the way, but which you only hear when the noise stops. Have you noticed how, after great pain, some things lose their importance? The rush, the pride, the petty disputes. It's as if life cleanses you from the inside out, and when that happens, all that remains is the essential. What is true, what is not, simply falls away. Not out of revenge, but out of spiritual gravity. What does not vibrate at the same frequency cannot be sustained. I want to invite you to do something now. Think of a situation where you did the right thing and no one recognized it. Write in the comments a word that defines how you felt at that moment. You don't need to justify yourself or tell the story. Just one word. It will be a reminder that, even though it was invisible, you remained true to yourself. And that, in the end, is what makes you strong. Because the truth is simple. Those who validate themselves internally do not depend on an audience. Those who have learned to get up on their own never fear falling again. And those who understand that silence is not absence, but refinement, have already begun to live on another level of consciousness. Perhaps that is why people with more light do not shine loudly. They illuminate in silence. There is something deeply liberating about stopping trying to be understood. The world will never fully understand someone who lives from their own truth, because truth is non-transferable. And that's okay. You didn't come to be understood, you came to understand yourself. You didn't come to please, you came to awaken. And awakening is almost always lonely. But what is born of this silence is the kind of strength that no approval can give, and no rejection can take away. So if life seems quiet today, if no one notices you, if the path seems narrow, breathe. You are not being forgotten. You are being refined. And when the dust settles, what will remain of you will be something that no longer depends on anyone else's gaze to shine. There is a point in the journey when fatigue turns into clarity. After so many falls, so many renunciations and silences, something begins to change, not on the outside, but on the inside. The search for recognition gives way to a quiet peace, a feeling of being where you should be, even if nothing is perfect. It's as if, after climbing the mountain, you look back and realize, what brought me here was not the support of others, but my persistence in continuing, even when no one believed in me. And in that moment, loneliness ceases to be pain and becomes power. Many call this maturity, but it is more than that. It is awakening. When you awaken, you discover that you don't have to wait for life to change to start living. You change, and life changes with you. The outside world, which once seemed to judge you, only reflects what you vibrate. What once seemed like rejection is now just guidance, and what seemed like failure today reveals itself as the exact training your soul needed. The unexpected is realizing that nothing was wasted. Every silence, every no, every departure was part of an invisible engineering, building the most authentic version of who you are. There is a true story that I like to remember. A man named Ernest Shackleton led an expedition to Antarctica in the early 20th century. His ship was trapped in ice for more than 500 days. No help, no contact with the world, just cold and uncertainty. Many believed it would be the end. But Shackleton kept the group together, not with promises, but with his presence. He didn't say, "We will survive." He said, "We will continue." When they were rescued, no man had died. They asked him how he did it. He replied, "Because I never stopped believing, even when it seemed impossible." That's what the inner journey is all about. The ability to stand tall even when the whole world freezes around you. Have you noticed how some people flourish precisely after going through chaos? A study by Columbia University followed people who had experienced loss, divorce, and new beginnings for 15 years. Surprisingly, 67% of them said that, after the initial suffering, they became more empathetic, more centered, and more grateful. Trauma, when embraced with awareness, turns into wisdom. Pain is not the opposite of peace. It is the soil from which peace springs when you decide not to run away from it. The difference lies in how you interpret what happened. What is ruin for some is foundation for others. You may be asking yourself, but how do I put all this into practice? How can I live this strength in my daily life? The answer is simple, but it requires emotional discipline. This is where the implementation plan begins. Not theoretical, but real. First step, the conscious pause. Set aside 5 minutes a day to silence everything. Voice, screen, noise. Sit down and just listen to your body. What does it ask for? What does it fear? The pause is where the soul whispers what the mind erases. And when you start listening, you start healing. Second step, silent fidelity. Choose a small action that represents who you want to be and stick to it, even when no one is watching. It could be making your bed, going for a walk, writing 3 lines a day. The size doesn't matter. What matters is the commitment. Integrity is built on small daily loyalty. Third step, the exercise of presence. When something irritates you, don't react immediately. Breathe and ask, what does this situation want to teach me about myself? This simple question shifts you from the role of victim to that of learner. This is how chaos becomes master. Step 4. Emotional cleansing. Before going to sleep, write down 3 things you are grateful for that day, and 1 thing you want to let go of. Gratitude reprograms the brain to notice what already works, and letting go of what hurts prevents the past from becoming a prison. Step 5. Self-alliance. This is perhaps the most important. Promise yourself that you will never abandon yourself again. When you are sad, stay with yourself. When you feel afraid, welcome yourself. When you make a mistake, forgive yourself. Being spiritually mature means being the shelter you have sought all your life. These simple practices, if repeated consistently, create a kind of strength that needs no witness. It is what Jung called the center of the self, the point where external chaos no longer shakes the internal axis. The person who lives from this center does not become cold. but serene. They do not become arrogant, but solid. They act from purpose, not impulse, and that difference changes everything. Perhaps that is the big secret. True freedom is not in being admired, but in no longer needing it. When you reach this state, something curious happens. People start to seek you out, not because you shout, but because you convey peace. Your presence becomes an invitation, and the most beautiful thing, you inspire without intention. There is no marketing stronger than the serenity of those who know themselves. There is one detail that few people notice. The most accomplished people you know, whether artists, scientists, or entrepreneurs, have something in common. They don't wait for inspiration. They act. In 2025, with all the technology and distractions, acting without depending on your mood is a silent revolution. It is the antidote to emotional procrastination, because if you only act when you feel like it, you live hostage to your internal mood. But if you act with purpose, you create your own mood. Consistency is the new miracle. What if you make a mistake along the way? You will make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. But mistakes, when understood, become a map. The human brain grows stronger when it learns from mistakes, not when it avoids them. Neuroscience calls this post-failure growth. That's why those who allow themselves to fall get up faster. The difference is not turning the stumble into an identity. To err is human. To remain down is a choice. Perhaps now you remember all the times you waited for someone to say, "It'll be okay." But the truth is, you can say that to yourself. And maybe it sounds strange at first, but try it. Say it quietly, right now. I am with me. That's what life wants to hear. Not from the world, from you. Because as long as you try to save yourself by looking outside, the inside will remain needy. But when the inside awakens, the outside falls into place. Imagine what it would be like to wake up tomorrow and realize that nothing needs to be perfect for you to be at peace. That peace is a decision, not a prize. That meaning is not in what you achieve, but in how you walk. This is the revolution that begins in silence and changes everything. From then on, loneliness becomes an ally, fear becomes a compass, and silence becomes a shelter. Now look inside and realize, what can you do today, in concrete terms, to get closer to your truth? Maybe it's turning off your cell phone for an hour, maybe writing something you feel, maybe just breathing and giving thanks. Awakening is not an event, it is a habit. Small, repeated, constant. And if something in this video touched you, if any phrase made you think, reminded you of who you were before the noise, then share it. Because every time a person awakens, they help the whole world wake up too. And please tell us in the comments what touched you the most. Or if you prefer, just write one word, present. It will be your sign that you have chosen to continue, even without an audience. If you felt that this video did you good, like it, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. That way, more people who need this message will be able to find it. And remember, the world may doubt, but your path does not depend on who believes. It depends only on you continuing to be true to your light, even when no one else sees it. Because it is in the moment you choose to stand alone that the entire universe bends to accompany you. There are moments when the world is silent and no one believes in you, but that is precisely when true strength is born. This video reveals how to transform loneliness into power, pain into wisdom, and silence into clarity. Inspired by Jung and real stories, it shows how to stop seeking external validation, overcome the need for recognition, and learn to act even without motivation. An emotional and practical guide for those who want to awaken, find purpose, and walk with their own light, even when no one is around.